All right, YouTube, I'm gonna try like heck to make this video worth your time. Oil pressure sensor switch. Oil light coming on and flickering. I am going to turn the car to the run position. And as you can see, there's no oil light icon right here. It's not there. You have a battery icon, which will go off if I turn the car on right now, because the alternator would come on and charge the battery. The gear light for the transmission would go off. The brake switch would go off, but only once I release the brake. The seatbelt icon would go off, and the check engine light would go off, hopefully. And here's a couple things electrically that hopefully will make sense. Why does the oil light flicker? What does it mean to have the low pressure sensor come on? What does it mean to have it stay off? Okay, so let's start with the brake light, see if we can do a little bit of electrical for those people who don't understand it intuitively, just like I don't. Okay, right now the brake light is connected. Okay, I am going to release the brake, and that disconnects the electrical connection. Now I press the parking brake and it's on. So I'm making an electrical connection right now. I release it and I am breaking the electrical connection. That is very different than the seatbelt icon, which just went off for some reason. Okay. When I put my seatbelt on, as soon as I make an electrical connection, it goes off. Now I'm going to break the electrical connection and the light goes on. Okay, so I'm going to make an electrical connection, and as I make the electrical connection, as I connect these things, it goes off. Now I break the connection and it goes on. So those are different ways of functioning. Brake, on, light goes on. Brake off, light goes off. Seatbelt, light goes on, make the connection, light goes off. So let's explain the oil pressure sensor switch. When you turn the car on, it creates pressure. As it creates pressure, it turns the oil light off. So when that oil light comes on, it's telling you danger, low pressure. So right now it's not connected, so therefore it's off. So if you buy a car and you turn the car on, one of the things you want to do is check and make sure all the dashboard lights are there. People cover these things up with black tape. They can take the bulb out behind that, and they can disconnect your oil icon just by disconnecting that connector. And by disconnecting it, look what happens. It doesn't go on. And because it doesn't go on, you might think you have a decent car, and when you don't have it, that light flickering or going on or anything, it doesn't even work, you could have a bad engine. If there's no pressure in the engine, it could mean that the spaces between the components inside the engine are so worn out that there's not enough pressure in the engine. So normally there's plenty of pressure in the engine, and you can even check the pressure, and you can check the electrical connection on those sensors. And let's just get out of the car and quickly try to see if we can go over a few things. All right, this is the dual overhead cam, 24 valve V6. This is the Duratec. This is not the Vulcan. On the Vulcan engine, you can see that shiny brass sensor with the clip on it. That's the radiator coolant temperature sensor. All right, on this car. All right, but on the Vulcan, that location is where I believe you have the low pressure sensor for the oil. So different car. To get to that, or to get to the oil pressure sensor on the Vulcan, you have to take off the throttle body and this tubing and some other stuff. But we're not working on that today. Okay, here's what we're working on today. What we're working on today is that's an oil pressure sensor switch, and that's the part. But I want you to notice something. Okay, the thread sizes here are completely different. Those are smaller threads, those are larger threads. This takes a 13/16, and some of these sensors come with the 13/16, and this one takes an 11/16. So what I was stuck with was this was like that. All right, so I think what happened is they replaced the sensor and they put in a plug. I don't think this is original. It doesn't make sense that it would be. So it was really hard to do all this work. And I had mistakenly thought that because I watched a video on the Vulcan that the oil pressure sensor switch was up there, and I went to take this off, and it's very similar looking, but you can see that's a pressure sensor switch. It has 2 prongs. Very easy to pop that thing off, by the way. You push down on the tab and it comes right off. Here, same thing, you push down on the tab. It wasn't hard to get either one of those off. What was impossible almost was getting this off, and even harder was this, getting it off. And you see there's a hole right here. Okay, so it's going to be pushing a little bit of pressure from the oil into there, and when it does, it's going to open up that switch, and when it opens up the switch, it breaks the electrical connection and turns the light off. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I gotta put some gloves on here. Sorry, but I was in the car, so I didn't want to have my nasty, dirty gloves on. All right, close enough. And I need this while I'm up here. Okay, some of the things you have to do to get this job. This has to come off. You all recognize what this is. If you don't, you shouldn't be doing this. All right, so that goes there roughly, and the end of it, so you can see it's angled, goes over and has to go into a hole that's virtually right in front of where this plug is. So this thing this has to come out in order to get to that other part. You can see there's a little O-ring right there, okay? And you can see the end of the dipstick sticking out of there. This is the bolt that went in there, and it's an 8. Okay, so an 8mm. Why would this be an 8mm? And then we go down here and get into the car, and it's not millimeters. Okay, so let's see if this will help. All right, you can see where that red gasket material is, and you can see the electrical connection on the back. That's where it is. There's your oil fill, and right there below it is where the dipstick tube assembly goes down. There's a bolt right below it that has nothing to do with it. You don't have to do anything to that bolt. It just slides in there. Okay, where does it slide in there? Let me see if I can be helpful. I don't know. Right there, the back of my finger. Let me see if I can even focus it at all. Sorry. But right there, there's the bolt that has nothing to do with it. You go up about 2 inches, there's a hole, and that's where the dipstick tube goes. Right above that, about 5 or 6 inches, that's where the sensor goes. Now you can see that I could barely get 3 fingers across in there. It's super tight. There's almost no room over here. I'm gonna try and see if I can get a socket on this, but you'd have to have a deep enough socket to get over that plastic assembly and not break it, as you saw I did with that other one. You have the AC cooler line, I think. Or is this, I don't know, the transmission cooler? I think it is AC. And then you have the filter. So you have no room at all. For illustrative purposes, this is an 11/16. I had to use that. But if you were to try and get this on there, think how far you'd have to turn that bolt to get, you know, even if you flipped it around each time. So you're better off if you're gonna try and use this to have one of these, and maybe not even an offset. It's questionable. I saw a video where some guy used a crescent wrench in here, and boy, did that look difficult. Okay, so I can't look at the video and look at this at the same time, but you'd have to basically get this thing up over it and on top of it, and you know, try to make little tiny maneuvers before you're hitting, you know, parts and the frame and, you know, everything. It's just, yeah, in your face. So I am gonna try and use this deep socket, and it might work. And if not, you know, I have that on the back. I might be able to grab that and spin it in there and then tighten it up. So we'll see. This is going to be interesting. And I also have a smaller wrench. I have a grinder, and I turned this 11/16 into a 13/16, and I'm pretty much ready to cut it. And by cutting it, I might be able to move it around enough in there. So that's going to happen later. I'm not going to bore everybody with that. But that's it. I think I've covered everything. So real quick review. That's the engine. Oil pressure sensor switch. Oil pressure shoots out of that engine area, and when it does, it opens up the circuit, which turns off the light. Why would you have that? Well, you can see this is nice and clean because I took it off and cleaned it. 106,000 miles. Magnet looked like a chia pet. Replaced the filter. Fluid looked clean, so they probably replaced the fluid but never took out the magnet. Big mistake. Permanent gasket, non-crushable gasket. Better than the flimsy rubber band ones. I hate those things. So you have your oil pan here. You can see lots of leaking. Maybe this car was neglected and ran too dry, or they just didn't change the oil. So you would normally change your oil. Above this oil pan is a pump. That's the oil pump, and it's called a sump, I think. But anyway, there's a pump there. There's a screen on the pump, and it's a metal screen, and that can get baked on garbage and debris in there. And because it has all that debris, maybe the oil pump is bad, or the oil pump is starved and can't pump oil because it can't grab enough oil because it's plugged up. But the other issue is the bearings and all the stuff. There's hollow tubes and stuff inside some of those things. The oil gets pumped into those tubes and comes out of those tubes and goes up to the upper top of the engine and creates all that pressure. And it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure, but it's got to get enough pressure. And if it's not enough pressure and the light's coming on, what it might be telling you is, hey, there's almost no pressure in this engine because it's worn out and it's dying. So time to sell, right? Get rid of it. It's going to be a rebuild. This, by the way, is a 7/8 inch wrench that I modified. Cut it. Just happened to be down here. And you can, make your own O2 wrench by doing that. I noticed this thing was just hanging there. So somebody's been down here, I think, and done some work, and I think they didn't have the right size sensor, and they used a plug, and that may affect the pressure. But it could be the oil pump is the pressure problem. It could be a bad sensor. Who knows? We'll see what happens when I turn it back on. And the other thing is, when I cleaned up, I used oil cleaner and some other stuff, and changed to 520 full synthetic. I only use full synthetic. Your blends, by the way, could be 1% blend. Why are you paying money for a blend if it's only 1% synthetic and 99% traditional? So I use full synthetic. Now that might also be a reason why it changed the pressure. It might have had regular conventional oil in there and that might have been more pressure. They might have put something in there to create more pressure. I don't know, could have got cheated, but on the test drive, it did not have a oil light. As soon as I changed to the oil and put that, something to try and seal the seals, Slick 50 something or other, came on right after that, and it was flickering. So it's only flickering. I get to a stoplight and it flickers, and then I push the RPMs, it goes off. As soon as I come to a stop and go below 1,000 RPMs, the light starts to go on, stays on, or flickers. And then as soon as I press the gas, it goes off. And I've explained the reason why is because by having higher RPMs, I'm creating more pressure, and more pressure turns off the light, whereas low pressure from idle or being off, the light comes on. Hopefully this has been helpful to somebody. Plan at least a couple hours of your day if you're gonna do this job.